I know, you guys were expecting that because I didn't get a Yu-Gi-Oh review out last week, that it was going to be another 4 weeks before you saw another one. Sorry to disappoint you. Today we're going to be talking about the proper beginning to the Death Tea arc. The first game in Death Tea to involve Yugi and his friends. This is chapters 28 and 29, Arena 1, and the important one out of the two, Shooting Stardust. Arena 1 is just set up and prep for the Death Tea event itself. We get a couple more scenes that will eventually make it into the anime later on. Yugi swears to participate in Death Tea, and so his grandpa is freed from the hologram booth. But the shock of the experience of death has injured his heart, so he is carted away to a hospital. But before he goes, we get one of the most iconic scenes, which will eventually be part of the anime later on, when he passes his deck to Yugi. His deck, which is now mine, as the Blue Eyes White Dragon, because I forgot to mention this, but at the end of the last chapter, just as he does in the anime, Kaiba does take Sugoroku's Blue Eyes and rips it in half. This may seem utterly ludicrous to someone who's obsessed with the most powerful cards, but in Duel Monsters, a playset is made up of 3 copies of a card. So having the 4th Blue Eyes doesn't do Kaiba any good, and allowing anyone else to have it just means they can use it against him. And ripping it up in front of Sugoroku and Yugi allows him to be an asshole, so win-win. Jinochi, of course, volunteers to go with Yugi through Death Tea, as does Honda, who just happens to be there at the opening of Kaiba Land. It's because of the intervention of the absolute worst character in Yu-Gi-Oh! Ever. Hands down. Honda's kid nephew, who is just absolutely disgusting, a distraction from the story, painfully unfunny. I'm going to be doing my absolute best to ignore his existence for the remainder of these reviews. But it does give Honda an excuse to be there for the event. I can think of half a dozen other excuses off the top of my head that wouldn't necessitate including this awful character, but I'm not the writer of Yu-Gi-Oh! What are you going to do? They head together into the first arena. It's a laser tag competition, and this is when they bump into, of all people, Anzu. In her eternal quest to save up enough money to go to America to study dance after high school, she's gotten a job at Kaiba Land now, and just happens to be working the very event that they're getting ready to play. Because, of course she is. This is another example of one of those Yu-Gi-Oh! Coincidences that's just ridiculous enough that you barely even question it. She can't participate with them because it is a 3-on-3 event, because Kaiba knew that both Jinochi and Honda were going to go with Yugi, somehow. He has hired 3 mercenary sharpshooters. Like, there's some more nuance to what exactly they are, but that's the gist of it, to compete against Yugi and his friends in this event. And he's rigged it so that if one of the participants is hit with one of the lasers, their vest will actually shock them. But then he has further stacked the deck against Yugi and his friends by giving them faulty guns that will not trigger the vests. Thankfully, though, Jinochi's there to do something monumentally stupid that somehow works out in everyone's favor. He effectively bum rushes the guys in the best scene in these 2 chapters by a wide margin. Knocks one of them out with a kick to the face, and his antics open up the other 2 for Honda to get some shots on them and realize the deficiency in their guns. Now, it could have also been the other guy's vests that were rigged not to shock them, and if that had ended up being the case, they would have been screwed later, but thankfully it was the guns and not the vests. Because when they go to regroup, they discover that Anzu, being a Kaiba Land employee, has one of the functioning guns. Honda, who knows how to shoot, is able to use his skills and a borrowed tactic from Die Hard to get the best of the 2 mercenaries that remain, take them out of the fight, and win the game. This is a really fun chapter. It's not a great chapter, but it's a fun chapter. There's a lot of really convenient stuff that happens in this chapter. So much so that it does stand out, even more so than in other chapters of Yu-Gi-Oh! But this stands out for a few reasons. It's pretty exciting. Of course, the art is great. The second of the 2 chapters, Shooting Stardust, has, if not the most actual physical action that we've ever gotten in a chapter of Yu-Gi-Oh! Before, pretty close to the most. So it's, of course, interesting to read, interesting to look at. There's the great Jinochi scene that I already mentioned. That's notable. This is, I believe, the first game in the series that Yugi himself is involved in that the other Yugi doesn't take over for him, so that's notable if that ends up being true. But most interestingly, this is Honda's proper induction into the group. He's been kind of tentative friends with these guys for a while, and Yugi's definitely helped him in the past, so he definitely appreciates Yugi. But he wasn't really part of their core group of friends until right here. And he gets a moment to shine in this chapter, so overall this is an excellent Honda chapter. And that's what makes it special. It is certainly, looking back, the least memorable of these Death Tea mini-stories, of these Death Tea arenas. At least to me. I hardly even remember that it exists until I go back to reread it. But every time I do go back to reread it, I'm not disappointed, which is really what matters. End of the day, there are chapters of Yu-Gi-Oh! That you can skip and not really miss anything important, and this just isn't one of them. But as per usual, guys, I'd like to know, what did you think of this chapter of Yu-Gi-Oh! If you have read it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord. Link in the description. And yeah, it's gonna sound a little bit beggy, but if you guys know people who like Yu-Gi-Oh!, please share this video with them. I'd really like to get the viewership on these videos up a bit, and I need your guys' help to do it. Either way though, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.